What drives a person to commit an act so horrifying it defies human comprehension? How does a mother, filled with anticipation and love, go from planning her daughter's baby shower to planning her funeral within days? And what happens when the very system designed to protect fails so catastrophically that two innocent lives are lost? It was supposed to be the happiest time of her life. 22-year-old Lacey Dodd was just weeks away from giving birth, eagerly preparing for the arrival of her first child. Baby shower invitations had been sent, gifts were piling up, and she was filled with hope for a bright future. But in a twist so horrifying it defied belief, her joy was brutally stolen.
Right now, Deandra Holloway is locked up and faces multiple charges for a crime the police say was unthinkable. Justina Cornell shares the horrific details from Alton.
They let us know that somebody was found dead next door.
That's when April Wooten learned the unimaginable, that her neighbor, 22-year-old Lisa Dodd, had been dead.
To have to lose a child that way, and that baby is an extension of her mother and the rest of her family, so they lost a child as well. They lost two.
Alton's police chief said that Dodd's mother hadn't heard from her in a few days, so last Thursday she went to check up on her daughter and found her in that horrific state.
The crime scene was at Dodd's apartment in Alton, off of Bolivar Street.
They just recently had moved in.
She was 8 months pregnant when she was killed. Her family was planning her baby shower at the end of June.
Her family would not be burying her and their grandchild.
Dodd had an on-again, off-again relationship with 22-year-old Deandra Holloway for about 2 years. Now Holloway faces several charges. Alton police chief says
has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of intentional homicide of an unborn child.
We're here as a resource. We're here to be supportive.
Maggie Menifee is the executive director of Alive, an organization that advocates for survivors of domestic violence. She has seen an increase in violence and the severity of those cases.
Just this year alone, we've had 330 referrals from law enforcement who they have already screened the client to be at high risk of being murdered.
Meanwhile, April Wooten says she'll never forget the pain of her neighbor's mom after she learned what happened. Court records say the suspect is accused of leaving Dodd's head in a dumpster, and Wooten tells me she could feel the pain of Dodd's mother.
On a warm June afternoon in 2022, Lacey's mother arrived at her daughter's apartment, expecting to find her excitedly preparing for motherhood. Instead, she walked into a nightmare. Lacey had been decapitated, her head cruelly discarded in a dumpster outside. The man responsible? Her on-again, off-again boyfriend, 25-year-old Deandra Holloway. But as police unraveled the gruesome details, an even darker truth emerged. Holloway had been hearing voices that he claimed had been pushing him toward something unspeakable. Was this a case of calculated evil, or was he a ticking time bomb, ignored by a system that failed to intervene in time? This is the chilling story of a young woman's tragic end, an unstable man plagued by paranoia, and a justice system struggling to balance accountability with mental illness. Born and raised in Jerseyville, Illinois, Lacey Dodd was a bright, loving, and caring young woman. Her mother, Heidi Noel, described her as having a beautiful smile and a big heart, always eager to help others. She had a strong sense of compassion, often going out of her way to make those around her feel loved and supported. Lacey had a close relationship with her family, particularly her mother, who she spoke to daily. She was a dreamer, full of aspirations, and determined to create a better life for herself and her unborn child. She had recently moved to Alton to start a new chapter in her life, preparing to welcome her first child. Despite the challenges she faced, she remained hopeful about the future. Lacey was excited about motherhood and took great care in planning for her baby's arrival, decorating the nursery, and discussing possible names for her daughter. Her friends described her as resilient, someone who always found a way to smile even in difficult times. She loved music, had a knack for photography, and often wrote in her journal about her hopes and dreams. She was a young woman full of life, taken far too soon in an unimaginable act of violence. Lacey's pregnancy was a source of great joy. She had nicknamed her unborn daughter Baby Bean, and was eagerly anticipating her baby shower, planned for late June. Invitations had already been sent out, gifts were being gathered, and excitement was in the air. But within days, All those dreams were shattered in an act of violence so grotesque it defied comprehension. Lisey's relationship with Holloway had been unstable for 2 years, an on-and-off affair marked by conflict, emotional volatility, and increasing concerns from those close to her. Friends and family had noticed troubling patterns, with Holloway displaying possessive and unpredictable behavior. He would often disappear for days, only to return with erratic excuses, leaving Lisey feeling abandoned and confused. Despite this, she continued to hope that their relationship could improve. Holloway's mother, Carla, had even begged him to leave Lisey, fearing the relationship was unhealthy for both of them. She had seen the warning signs in her son: his paranoia, his temper, and his growing distrust of those around him. She knew that he had struggled with mental health issues, frequently claiming to hear voices and suspecting that people were conspiring against him. These delusions intensified whenever he felt rejected or challenged, and Carla worried that his unstable mind would lead to a dangerous outcome. Their relationship was a cycle of reconciliation and conflict. Holloway would promise change, only to fall back into erratic and controlling behaviors. Lisey, compassionate and hopeful, often forgave him, believing that he could become the partner she wished him to be. However, his episodes of anger became more severe. There were reports of heated arguments, unexplained outbursts, and even moments when Lisey confided in close friends that she felt unsafe. Despite these red flags, she struggled to cut ties completely. She was young, deeply empathetic, and had invested so much time in the relationship that she hesitated to walk away entirely. Tragically, it was a hesitation that would cost her everything. But the most disturbing details came from Holloway's family after the murder. They revealed that he had been struggling with severe mental illness for years. His stepfather, Chris Hawk, described how Holloway was plagued by dark voices, one of which he named Ruth. His paranoia had grown to such extremes that he believed his own family was out to get him. Despite multiple efforts to secure long-term mental health treatment for him, Holloway was repeatedly turned away because he had not yet committed a crime. The warning signs were there, but the system failed to intervene in time, and Lisey paid the ultimate price. Holloway's family had been seeking mental health assistance for him for years, but their cries for help were repeatedly ignored. They were told he could not be detained unless he committed a crime, a tragic loophole in the system that ultimately cost Lisey her life. Even after multiple violent outbursts and troubling signs of severe paranoia, Holloway was never mandated into long-term psychiatric care. His mother and stepfather had expressed concerns to various authorities, but legal and healthcare barriers prevented any meaningful intervention. Reports indicate that Holloway had several encounters with law enforcement, yet each time, he was either released or deemed not an immediate threat. Mental health professionals have since commented on the dire need for better crisis intervention strategies that could have flagged Holloway as a danger before it was too late. Domestic violence advocates have also highlighted how Lisey, like many victims, may have struggled to leave the relationship due to a lack of clear resources or legal protections. With a stronger support network and better intervention measures, this tragedy might have been prevented. Lisey's mother, Heidi, had a routine. Because of the unstable nature of her daughter's relationship, she made it a point to check in with her daily. When Lisey failed to respond to multiple messages, Heidi's concern turned to dread. On June 9, 2022, she went to Lisey's apartment to check on her. What she found would haunt her forever. Inside, Heidi discovered the decayed body of her daughter. Lisey's severed head had been dumped in a nearby trash can. The sheer brutality of the scene was so horrifying that even veteran police officers struggled to process it. Alton Police Chief Marcos Pulido later described the crime in an emotional statement.
Hello everyone. I come to you today just to share some additional information about a press release that had just been sent out regarding murder charges related to a murder investigation that was conducted last week. Last week, June 9th, at about 12:59 p.m., the Alton Police Department did respond to a residence in the 3400 block of Boulevard Street in reference to a possible homicide. What was observed, what was learned, what was found is absolutely terrible. Every murder is absolutely terrible. will never take that away. But what happened to 22-year-old Lisa Dodd, who had just moved to this place in Alton, is beyond irreprehensible. It's abominable. It is completely terrible what happened to her. DeAndre Holloway, 22 years of age, who had an address from the Litchfield area and was from that general area, has been charged with her murder. Some of the things I'm about to share are terrible, so I caution you if you want to continue listening. What DeAndre Holloway, and it's probably the last time I'm going to use his name, and you will know whenever I'm referring to him. But what that monster was charged with today, about what she went through, can make some people just completely lost for words. That monster, that savage monster, has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of intentional homicide of an unborn child, dismembering a human body, I'll say that again, dismembering a human body, offenses relating to motor vehicles, and concealment of a homicidal death. Now, I just mentioned some things that are public that I'll go into a little bit of detail on. Again, so I caution you. That monster and Lisa has had an on and off dating relationship for about 2 years. She was pregnant. She was pregnant with an expected delivery date in late July. Before I forget to mention this, that monster is charged with 2 counts on each of those charges I just mentioned before. Those are relative to the theories of murder. She was savagely killed.
Instead of planning a baby shower, her family is planning a funeral. The brutality of this crime is something I have never seen in my entire career. The sheer disregard for human life, for an innocent mother to be and her unborn child, is something that shakes me to my core. We as officers deal with violence every day, but this was different. This was evil in its most raw and unfiltered form. The manner in which she was taken from this world was not just gruesome. It was personal, calculated, and deliberate. The crime scene was something out of a nightmare, something that I would not wish upon anyone to ever witness. The suffering Lisa must have endured in her final moments is something I cannot comprehend, and it is something her family will have to live with forever. This wasn't just a murder. It was an obliteration of a future, of dreams, of hope. I want the community to know that we did everything in our power to bring this monster to justice, and we will continue to fight for those who no longer have a voice. Lisa and Baby Bean deserve so much more than this fate, and I will never be able to shake the thought of how their lives ended. Justice has been served, but it does not erase the pain, the horror, and the devastating loss that this family has endured. The brutality of the crime sent shockwaves through the town. Police quickly identified Holloway as the prime suspect. His arrest, however, came under unusual circumstances. He was taken into custody in Gillespie, Illinois, during an unrelated theft investigation. Upon further investigation, law enforcement linked him to Lisa's murder. The search for Holloway had been intensive. Authorities combed through security footage, interviewed witnesses, and traced his last known whereabouts. In the hours after Lisa's body was discovered, police issued an alert, warning the public that the suspect was dangerous and should not be approached. Detectives worked tirelessly, coordinating with surrounding jurisdictions to track Holloway's movements. It was a random theft report that led officers to him. Gillespie police responded to a call about a suspicious individual attempting to steal from a local business. When they arrived, they found Holloway acting erratically, muttering to himself, and appearing disoriented. Employees at the store stated that he had been pacing back and forth for nearly an hour, appearing agitated and looking over his shoulder frequently as if he was being followed. When officers apprehended Holloway, they ran his information and quickly discovered that he was wanted in connection with a far more heinous crime. Bodycam footage later revealed that upon being taken into custody, Holloway initially resisted, screaming incoherently about them watching him and how they had set him up. Officers found blood-stained clothing among his possessions, which further confirmed their suspicions. In a search of his last known locations, police recovered additional evidence, including a knife with traces of Lisey Dodd's DNA, linking him directly to the crime scene. Detectives later revealed that Holloway had been attempting to evade capture, using back roads and abandoned buildings to hide. The arrest marked the end of a frantic manhunt and the beginning of a long legal battle to bring him to justice. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of intentional homicide of an unborn child, dismembering a human body, concealment of a homicidal death, and offenses related to motor vehicles. His bond was set at $2 million. As Holloway awaited trial, his family publicly defended him, arguing that he was not a monster but a severely mentally ill man who had been failed by the system. His stepfather insisted that while the crime was monstrous, Holloway himself was not a monster. He explained how Holloway had suffered from severe paranoia for years, frequently believing that even his own family was conspiring against him. According to his stepfather, Holloway had been hearing dark voices that urged him to harm others, and the family had made multiple attempts to get him psychiatric help, only to be turned away. "We saw the signs," his stepfather stated. "We knew he needed help, but every time we tried, we were told that unless he committed a crime, there was nothing that could be done. Now, after something unthinkable has happened, suddenly he's being held. The system completely failed him, and in turn, it failed Lisey." He went on to express his sorrow for Lisey's family, stating that they were equally devastated by what had happened. "What he did was monstrous, but I can't say he was in control of himself. If the system had intervened when we asked for help, we might not be here today, mourning 2 lives lost in such a horrific way." Hawk stated, "We tried to get him help for at least 3 years. We were always told that they can't hold him unless he's done something. Now he's being held because he's done something." The defense raised questions about Holloway's mental fitness to stand trial. In September 2022, he was deemed unfit and transferred to a state mental institution. However, after treatment, he was later found competent to stand trial in February 2023. After multiple legal delays, Holloway finally pleaded guilty to all charges in December 2024. On January 17, 2025, he was sentenced to 60 years in prison, a sentence that would ensure he would spend the majority of his life behind bars. Under Illinois law, he will be required to serve at least 52 years before being eligible for release. For Lisey's grieving mother, the sentencing brought little solace. At the hearing, she delivered a heartbreaking victim impact statement. "On that night, I received a life sentence. To live the remainder of my life without my beautiful, loving, sassy daughter. A life without knowing the joy of watching Lisey raise my granddaughter." In the wake of the tragedy, the community rallied around Lisey's family. A GoFundMe campaign raised nearly $16,000, which was used to cover funeral expenses. In honor of Lisey's love for helping others, her family donated $5,000 to the Oasis Women's Center, a shelter for domestic violence victims, and $2,000 to the Riverbend Humane Society. The tragedy also sparked conversations about the intersection of mental illness and violence. Could this murder have been prevented if Holloway had received the psychiatric care he so clearly needed? Could Lisey's life have been saved if she had been able to escape the toxic relationship sooner? For Heidi Noel, the answers don't change the pain, but she hopes her daughter's story will serve as a warning and a call to action. "I just wish she would have known how loved she was, that she wouldn't have ever been alone, that she could have gotten out of this relationship and had a full life."